In Ninjago's 14-year span, there have been plenty of good sets each year, so today I thought it would be a good idea to look at what I think is the very best from each year. Starting off with 2011, there is one set that stands above the rest. The Fire Temple was the flagship set for 2011, and is one of the few sets that can still compete with the modern sets of today. The big feature of the temple was splitting it open to reveal the Fire Dragon. The Fire Dragon was probably the weakest part of the set, but it also wasn't really the reason you would get this set. Lastly, the minifigures were exceptionally strong. It included Samukai, Garmadon, and Wu, which are all excellent figures, and you got all of the golden weapons, including the newly molded Fire Sword. 2012 introduced a lot of iconic sets. We got the first ever Destiny's Bounty, we got the Ultra Dragon, and we got the Samurai XM. But I personally think the best set of 2012 was one of the smallest ones in Kai's Blade Cycle. The bike is one of the best built bikes Ninjago has ever given us, and even though the function is sometimes inconsistent, because the bike is so well built, I can look over the inconsistencies of the function. The set actually did get a Legacy remake, which improved on the function, but made the actual bike appearance worse, which has made me like this 2012 variant more and more as time has gone on. There were only 6 Ninjago sets released in 2013, and it was a pretty sad group of sets. I really don't have very strong opinions on a lot of the sets from this year, with quite a few of them being candidates for some of the worst Ninjago sets of all time. But I do think there is one really good set from the year, being Kai's Firem. What really makes this set stand out is the fact that it integrates CCVS pieces perfectly with the rest of the build. And if you've been watching the channel for a long time, and let's be real, you have not, then you would know I'm a big Hero Factory fan. I also do think that this is one of the best $10 Ninjago sets of all time because of the amount of playability you can get out of such a small set. While 2014 isn't exactly much better than 2013, with only 9 sets being released, but there definitely were some decent sets. The year really shines in the Summer Wave, which only has 2 sets, the Battle for Ninjago City and the X1 Ninja Charger. While both of these sets are very solid, I personally prefer the X1 Ninja Charger a little bit more. Part of that is because we got a worse version of this in Legacy, which has actually made me appreciate this set more, and part of it is also me just not loving the color scheme of the temple. The main gimmick of the X1 Ninja Charger is the fact that it can release a mini Kai bike, which is not at all impressive, but because the function works well and doesn't make the set look ridiculous, I'm not going to dock any points for the bike looking lame. Additionally, it's got a spring-loaded shooter on the back, which honestly looks like something they'd throw in sets they make today. And honestly, the entire set just looks like something they would make today. Now obviously they wouldn't, because they did not do that in Legacy, but if they did release this today, it would still hold up to the standard I have come to expect for Ninjago sets, and it certainly would be better than some of the more recent car sets we've had. You know, there's been a lot of Kai sets on this list, but the good news is that's gonna stop now, because they didn't make any Kai sets in 2015. 2015 really was a major step up from any previous year of Ninjago, with standouts like the Final Flight of Destiny's Bounty and the Moro Dragon, along with some more iconic ninja sets like Jay's Electromech and Cole's Boulder Blaster. But the best set was the biggest set at the time and the first direct-to-consumer Ninjago set, the Temple of ARjitsu. This set had it all. It came with all the Deepstone Ninja, an exclusive Wu, and of course some iconic characters from the show like Misako, the Mailman, and of course, Dareth! Oh, and did I mention this set also comes with an incredible temple. There are 2 smaller side shops, one of them is a fish shop and the other one is a blacksmith shop, but the appearance of this set is just so good. It's arguably the best looking Ninjago set of all time, especially if you don't like the busyness of the city sets, and it's definitely the best Ninjago temple of all time. 2016 was another very solid year. While the Skybound sets weren't great, the actual storyline told during that wave was one of the best, and then the Summer Wave hit us with some amazing sets, but one of the worst parts of the show. The Lighthouse Siege is a set that is very iconic, and one that I'm very glad to own, but the best set is definitely the Ultra Stealth Raider. This will always be the legacy version of the Ultrasonic Raider in my heart. Everything about the set is fantastic. It has a very smooth design using a lot of round and larger pieces to capture that look. It also splits into 4 different vehicles, and none of those vehicles actually look incomplete or just flat out bad. They also do include specific parts to designate which vehicle is for which ninja, but they keep it small so it doesn't take away from the overall look. I also do prefer them trying to keep the whole thing one color instead of doing a 4-color mashup, which can look a little awkward, although it has been successfully pulled off. And of course, there's also Shen's chair mech. 2017 was a monster year for Ninjago, as it had a movie come out for it, which meant that 1 billion sets also came out. And let me tell you, these sets were good.
It was perfect. Perfect.
The builds were fantastic, there were a ton of cool and unique minifigures, and also the prices on a lot of these sets were really just incredible. Some of the standout sets included the Destiny's Bounty, and also the Dragon's Forge, which even though it wasn't a movie set, was just as good, if not better, than a lot of the movie sets. However, the best set is pretty obvious, being Ninjago City. This is the first of what has now become a sub-theme of sets. There's really so much to talk about this, so I'm just going to highlight a few of my favorite things. First off, the way they did the water was new at the time and was done so well that they're still using that technique to this day. Next, there were a ton of minifigures, but the best one was definitely the Galador guy. And lastly, this set had a ton of references in it, but I think my personal favorite is the movie posters, which have a few that are interchangeable, and there's a spot where you can store the ones that you're not displaying. It was always going to be hard for 2018 to compete with all the incredible sets that 2017 gave us, but a couple of them did a pretty good job. Between Dragon's Pit, Ninjago City Docks, the Ninja Nightcrawler, and Firstborn, there were a handful of sets at all different sizes that were great. But the best set of the bunch, in my opinion, is definitely the Diesel Knot. First off, this set is incredibly unique for a couple reasons. The first reason is that this is one of the few large bad guy sets that is actually a vehicle rather than a temple or fortress. Additionally, the look of this thing is something that is just so distant from what you would typically expect from a Ninjago set. A lot of people have described this set as a crossover between Mad Max and Ninjago, and I wouldn't be shocked if the designers actually stated that this were true. This thing is pretty much a movable fortress, as it includes a prison cell, plenty of seats for the dragon hunters, and plenty of guns to attack the ninja or the dragons. Overall, just a really strong set that I believe is the best of 2018. 2019 started off extremely strong, with the first wave of Legacy, which gave us remakes of a ton of iconic sets. However, the best set is actually from the Summer Wave, which includes a bunch of bad to mediocre sets. And then Lloyd's Titan Mac, which is one of the best Ninjago sets of all time. The coolest part about the set is the wings on the back, which also can detach and act as a mini plane. Then you have the actual mech itself, which is just incredible. The only downside on this mech is that there's no bendable knees, but bendable knees really weren't a thing at this time. Otherwise, you've got yourself a really incredible set. It's got 2 weapons as well, one giant sword, which is really easy to swing around because the arms can move in pretty much any way, and then there's a saw, which is actually more fun in my mind because it's basically a better Ninjago fidget spinner than the actual Ninjago fidget spinner. Of course, the mech isn't the only thing that came in this set. It has some very solid minifigures as well, including a Forbidden Spinjitzu Zane, which is probably the highlight figure, along with General Vex, who is another great figure. That being said, while the minifigures are good, I just want to re-emphasize that the highlight of the set is the mech and everything else is just a bonus. Moving into the 2020s, we have another bad guy set making it onto the list, this time with the Skull Sorcerer's Dragon. And honestly, since this set, there really hasn't been any standout villain sets. The Skull Sorcerer's Dragon is a giant dragon that does a good job capturing a dead skeleton-like persona, but also has enough bulk to make it feel giant. The best parts of this dragon are the ribcage section, which unfortunately you don't really get to see very often because it's pretty much always going to be facing downward. And then the head is just incredible. It's one of the best brick built heads out there, and the designers did an excellent job focusing on the smaller details to set the head apart from most of the other brick built dragon heads. The set also does have some small side builds which are a part of the board game gimmick from this wave. Lastly, There are the minifigures, none of which that are exclusive, but this was the cheapest way to get the Skull Sorcerer, so that's a bonus. To celebrate the 10th year of Ninjago, LEGO decided to hit us with 3 different waves, and unfortunately the last wave of Legacy. Some of my favorite sets from this year include the Boulder Blaster, the Hydra Bounty, Nia's Water Dragon, and Zane's Titan Mac. But unfortunately for all of those sets, this year had another Ninjago City set, this time being Ninjago City Gardens. This set was a huge step up from the last Ninjago City set we had received, and it also did things differently than the previous 2 versions. Instead of having mainly Ninjago Movie figures, we instead got a ton of Ninjago figures that were based off the TV show or Legacy, and of course, some NPCs as well.
Hooray!
I'm not going to talk too much about all the details of this set, but I will highlight some of my favorite things. First off, the leaves coming off of the set help give it some nature to a set that is otherwise a very busy looking set. Additionally, it also has a small build of Zane's statue, which is a really nice bonus to add. Lastly, I want to highlight that this set does come with Chen's Noodle House as one of the buildings in the city. Then there's the minifigures, which I personally think the best one is the Golden Wu, but I could see some people preferring the Mechanic or some of the Urban Ninja. Also, as of the time of this video, this is the first set that is actually still available. So if you're watching this and have now decided you want to get it, you can do so. Core and Crystallized. A wave of bad sets and a wave of mediocre and overpriced sets. This year was not a good year for Ninjago in my opinion, but maybe you might think differently. Luckily, I'm not factoring price into this list, so the best set in my mind is Nia's Samurai XM, which is an egregiously overpriced set. The 2 blades aren't anything special, but they work perfectly fine because they have arms with plenty points of articulation. It's also got shoulder cannons, which are pretty cool and also add homage to the original Samurai Mac. I know one point of contention is the red X on this set. I know I wasn't the biggest fan of it when the set was first revealed, but it's definitely grown on me a bit. And of course, there's also a ton of figures to discuss. There's quite a few desirable figures in the set. 6 of them are exclusive to the set, and some highlights include Sensei Wu, Oni Garmadon, and Pythor. Although all of these figures are pretty exceptional, with the exception of Lil Nelson, who is a character I particularly don't like and would have rather seen in a Ninjago City set. That being said, this is still a very solid minifigure selection. There's also a small Vengestone Dragon side build. It's nothing special, but it's always nice to see that there's something to fight against in a set, especially a large one like this. Now we're finally getting into more recent stuff. Last year, we had another wave of core along with the introduction of Dragons Rising. The best set is definitely Ninjago City Markets. This set pays a lot of homage to a lot of things we saw between Season 8 to Crystallized. You've got a lot of random characters we saw in the show, like Hounding McBragg, Misdemeanor, and Racer 7, who by the way has a very nice torso with a reference to Bionicle. And Camille, a character we probably would have never seen without the set. The actual build has plenty of Easter eggs, but the coolest thing to me is Dareth's bar, which is honestly something I'm a little surprised LEGO decided to make since the bar is very adult themed. It also stands out very well compared to the other Ninjago City sets, as it opts for a wider and more open design, which helps make it feel a bit less busy and doesn't make it feel repetitive to the original Ninjago City set or the gardens. And finally, we have hit this year, and this year was a pretty big one. We had 3 waves with some sets of all different sizes, along with 8 mechs, including one of the best Ninjago mechs of all time, Cole's Titan Mac. But the best set isn't actually Cole's Titan Mac. And I know what you're thinking. The best set is obviously the Tournament Temple City. And if you're thinking that, you would be wrong. Instead, it's the best Ninjago dragon of all time, the Source Dragon of Motion. This dragon's incredible with so much detail throughout. It does a great job of blending between red and dark red and uses translucent orange as extra highlights and gold parts as a mix of armor and highlights. The horns are also really cool and give it a nice flare, and the wings are absolutely huge. There's also plenty of points of articulation, and the thing is super strong so it can carry a ton of dragons on it. The set also comes with a pretty interesting side build, which to me is definitely just a smaller version of the Shadow Dojo, but that's not confirmed, so don't take my word on that. Lastly, the set also has these small spirit dragons, which are really cool, and is also the cheapest way to get the newest variant of Lord Ross, although $150 is not necessarily cheap.